Seam sealing, it's the difference between a wet night and a dry night, but it often puts people off with siliconized fabrics. The shelter behind me, the Lux F6, I'm going to be using on a trip very soon, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to record how I actually seam seal a tent. Seam sealing siliconized fabric can appear to be complicated, and if you rush it, it can be very messy. The system that I'm going to show you takes time, but it's worth doing and worth doing well, because you'll have a nice, neat product to show at the end of it. Obviously, the first thing you need is some sealant, and everybody recommends, naturally, for siliconized fabrics, is Silnet. Some videos will suggest that you apply this straight from the tube. And here's an example of what can go wrong if you do that. So somebody has tried or attempted to apply the sealant straight from the tube. And as you can imagine, the finish on your lovely expensive tent you've just bought isn't going to look good when it's laid on so heavy and thick as this. And this is what scares people most of all, is that when they try to do the sealing, it will end up like this. Great big splodges of sealant. So the solution is to water it down slightly with white spirit to create a more usable solution to apply to the fabric. The shelter behind me has been up for a few hours, and today is not a warm day, it's a sort of a cool, blustery spring day. But it means that the threads in the seams have been pulled taut, and so consequently, as I apply the sealant, it'll work its way into the threads and the various stitching that it needs to get into. But the most important part, as you've just seen, is to make a neat job of it, because we don't want our shelters looking like a dog's dinner. So, the tools for the job. First of all, you need a tube of Silnet, check. You need a receptacle to mix it in, and I've chosen a little glass jam jar. The reason you use glass or pottery of some kind is that if you use plastic, when you add white spirit, it'll melt and dissolve the plastic. So, a glass jar. White spirit, as mentioned. A stirring stick, a little lollipop stick here, or something simple, similar, like a old pencil or a piece of stick or something. And then this is the brush that I use. If I just show you against that. It's a stipple brush, fairly stiff, the sort of thing that you pick up perhaps in a modelling shop or a children's paintbrush set, something like that perhaps. Anyway, it's very, very stiff, and that works really well for getting the liquid into the stitching. And then some kitchen towel, which if you spill any of the solution on where you don't want it, a little dab of white spirit on here will wipe it off the surface. Due to the nature of siliconized fabric, nothing will stick to it. So as much as it would be lovely to be able to use masking tape, decorator's masking tape, to mask off the areas that you want to do, to save any runniness, unfortunately it just won't stick to it, so it's impossible. Hence the reason that this little stipple brush is quite a good idea. And so what we do is we take the solution, dip a bit in, and we just stipple it along into the stitching, which concentrates it in one area. And any runniness, any bits of drips that may start to go where you don't want them to go, then you use the paper dipped in white spirit just to clean that up. Now, due to the nature of this particular tent, all the pressure is obviously at the top where the pole is. And so obviously this is the stitching that is the most important to actually treat. So I shall be treating all the way around the crown, the tension points here, and then the other tension points, which are the guide points around the outside, and then probably the door zip, and that'll be about it, because that is where the majority of the tension and any possible leaks may take place. So let's mix up the solution and get started. Okay, so let's now mix our solution up. Now, we don't want to do all of it in one go, for obvious reasons. So we just have a little splodge in the bottom there. About that much, you can see. Add a splash of white spirit and give it a stir. Now, somebody once described it to me as being the consistency of thick olive oil, which I think is a good description. Now, that is too runny, so let's put a blob more in there. Yeah, I'd say that was still too runny. So I've probably used about half a tube so far. That's more like it. So that looks to me about right. So let us now apply that to the fabric and see how we get on. Okay, moment of truth. Just gently dab it in there. Don't have too much on the brush. Going basically. So here we are an hour and a half later, and I've completed the task. I've done all the way around the crown, over the top, the main ridge point, down the door zip and all the guide points. The amount that I mixed up earlier on, I've got that much left, which was pretty well half of it really, and I've only used half a tube of Silnet, so I've got more left should I need it. Silnet recommend that you should wait 3 to 6 hours for it to dry completely. I'm finding in these sort of weather conditions with a good breeze and reasonable temperatures, it's going off fairly quickly. But I'm still going to leave the shelter up all night to dry thoroughly, and also if it rains, obviously test it to see if there's any leaks inside. I should imagine it'll be fine. I've done this several times before now and never had a problem. The main thing to remember is that it's a patience job. You've just got to take your time, do a little bit at a time, and if you do spill any or put any droplets on the material, then kitchen paper dipped in white spirit will remove any marks and leave you with a neat job. Just remember the one I showed you earlier on, you don't want to apply it thick straight from the tube. That is a disaster waiting to happen. So I hope that's been of some help. Take your time, enjoy the process, and then hopefully you'll enjoy some very dry camping nights as well. Best of luck. Thanks for watching.